Update. I suspect my husband is having an affair with his stepsister. Continuing from my last update, I did go to his dad's house that weekend when my husband said he was going to see him. When I arrived, only my husband's car was in the driveway. Unsure of what to do, whether to call his dad or my husband, I decided to just go in because I didn't want to play games. As I walked in, I heard my husband and Jess's voices coming from the kitchen, and it sounded like they were yelling. Even now, I couldn't tell you what they were saying. I was so full of adrenaline that it felt like I was watching them on mute. He saw me and looked like a deer in headlights. All I could manage to say was, "What's going on?" I stared at them for a few seconds before my fight or flight response kicked in. Being very non-confrontational, my instinct was to turn around and run. He chased after me and pulled me into a guest room to talk. Again, I asked what was going on, that he's been acting so weird and so has Jess, and point blank asked if he was cheating on me. He seemed shocked at the question, but then out of nowhere started bawling his eyes out. I've never seen my husband cry before. He said that no, he's not cheating, but has something to tell me, but couldn't do it there, and needed to leave / for us to go back to our house. At first I protested and said no, I needed to know right then and there, but he still was having a breakdown begging me, so I agreed. We left his car there and drove home together in mine, but I sat in silence the whole ride as he cried and was trying to collect himself. When we got home, we sat in the living room, and I once again asked him what the fuck was happening, and my patience had run thin. Then out came his word vomit. He told me that in college, our junior / Jess sophomore year, after him and a bunch of our friends had gone to a party, we were dating by this time, but I wasn't there that night. I'd come home for the weekend to hang out with family that was in town, and he got really drunk. Our guy friends kind of ditched him to go hook up, so Jess offered him to crash on her couch for the night. Our school had on campus departments, and she had a single BC. She was an RA. He said he woke up at some point after that, with his pants down and her on top of him, having sex. He told me at the time he felt out of it, and didn't really get what was happening, and that's all he remembers was waking up and feeling it / seeing her. He then woke up again a couple hours later, and she was asleep in her own bed, so he left and went back to his own dorm. He never told anyone. It took him a long time to even fully understand what had happened, and he felt like he couldn't tell anybody because 1, he felt ashamed and embarrassed. 2, he didn't think anyone would believe him. 3, he didn't want to be known as the guy that slept with his stepsister. 4, he was afraid of losing me. And 5, he was worried about his dad, and if he found out that it could affect or ruin his new marriage, and that his dad is so happy with his stepmom. He told me he basically just acted like nothing happened, even around Jess when we all hung out together. He said him and her never spoke about it or said anything until a couple years later, when him and I got engaged after graduation. She sent him a text essentially saying she loved him and thought about that night all the time, and that why did their parents have to meet and get married, they could be together otherwise, etc. Essentially, she is obsessed with him. Shamefully, I will admit, when he first told me all of this, I wasn't sure what to think or believe, until I saw their text messages. I questioned him, saying if this was the case, why are they always talking? Why wouldn't he distance himself now that we're married and out of school? He told me it started up again with her, about 6 months ago, like I said on my original post, when him and I told our families that we decided we wanted to try for a baby. He had a screenshot of the text she sent him the next day ranting about how he shouldn't do this. Marriages aren't permanent until a baby comes into the mix. There's still a chance for them to be honest with their family, and for him to leave me. She still loves him after all this time, etc. He replied saying he loved me and wanted to start a family with me, and that he didn't love her in that way, and he never wanted her to bring this up to him ever again. That's when her demeanor changed, and she said if he didn't love her, why did he FCK her, and what would their family think, essentially blackmailing him. I read through as many of their texts as I could handle, and it was always her saying things like she was thinking about him, she wants to see him. She'd even send texts while we were all together telling him he looks good in that outfit. Sometimes he wouldn't reply, and others he'd be trying to have a normal convo / steer it in a different direction, and sometimes just telling her to stop it. The days he's told me he's going to hang out with his dad, it's her begging him to go over there so she can see him, or she will tell her mom everything. So he'd agree to go, but he swears nothing has ever happened, that one of their parents would be there a majority of the time, and it would just be all of them on the patio or in the living room. That day, he went there to tell her he was sick of it and couldn't do it anymore. She could tell people whatever she wants, but he was done, and that's why they were yelling. I sat there taking it all in, and honestly was speechless, as I did not expect any of this. I asked him about our sudden lack of intimacy, essentially only during my fertile window since we're trying for a baby but never any other time, and he said all of this being brought up for him mentally has made him shut down about sex. He was only doing it for me BC I want a baby. That it's taken him so long to realize / come to terms with the fact that she assaulted him. And how this harassment. I cried. I felt betrayed by her, and then a heavy, deep empathy for him. I just hugged him and cried, and he cried too. I told him he really needs to tell his dad, because we can no longer associate with her in any way, and how can we manage that when she lives with him? At first he said no, he couldn't because he's worried they won't believe him, and also doesn't want to ruin his dad's life, because how could the marriage with his stepmom survive this? I told him I don't have an answer for that. He has to trust that his dad will believe him, and I was also worried about her panicking after their argument and doing something crazy. He agreed to tell his dad, and said he wanted to do it alone. The following weekend he met up with Dad and told him everything, showed the texts to him, etc. His dad believed him and, like me, was caught off guard and speechless. This led to him telling his wife and saying he was kicking Jess out. However, his wife did not believe it. She claims my husband must have edited the texts somehow, actual texts in the message app that you can scroll through, and it's Jess' number attached to the contact. Jess freaked out, saying none of it was true, and he was the one who'd been harassing her. That's when my husband threatened to take it all to the police for an order of protection against her if she did not tell the truth, and she finally admitted to everything in an insane meltdown. His stepmom is horrified. His dad doesn't know if he can get past her not believing my husband and accusing him. We are currently in this weird limbo phase of the whole family on edge. Jess is still living there. His dad has demanded she leave and has given her 2 weeks instead of kicking her out on the spot in an attempt to try and salvage the situation with his wife. My husband and I are having lots of talks trying to regroup. We've put trying for a baby on hold as he seeks therapy for this. He still is considering going to the police for the harassment. My heart is broken for him, and also trying to come to terms with the truth that Jess, who I've known for years, would do something like this. I was prepared to uncover an affair, but never this. I'm not sure if there will be any more updates after this, maybe if my husband decides to pursue legal action. I want to say thanks to everybody who pushed for me to dig into my suspicions, otherwise this could have gone even further. I don't like to think of what could have happened.